it's, you find a place that resonates with you, right? Sometimes you have to look for it, but sometimes you just know it, and sometimes you live in it, like here. And I've been looking at these buildings for 4 years now. So my daughter Maddie, I don't know if you know Maddie very well. You know her a little bit, but she's been here for 4 years, 3 years, right? This last year. But this place has made a big impact on me too, like on the way I look at it, the way it appears differently every time. And what I can't get out of my head when I look at this building is I can't get Theodate Pope Riddle, the architect, out of my mind. Like she's here, she's in this building, right? This is painting. This building is as much about painting a portrait of her as it is about painting a picture. It's way more than painting a picture of the thing. In fact, I don't think that whenever we paint something, we don't really paint. We paint about things, right? We paint about the landscape. We paint about the person. We paint about the building. So whatever this is about to you is what will make its way into your painting. Maybe not in the first, hour-long painting you ever do of it, but it starts a thinking process, and that's the exciting part of getting started, starting the thinking process. And there's talking, and talk, and then there's painting. And painting and talking don't. You can paint and talk at the same time, but you have to paint. So I'm going to sit down, and I'm going to start painting. But I'm only going to do like a 15 minute demonstration, which is more like an orientation, right? I'm not going to finish here, but I want to get you started, and I want you to jump into it sort of full on. And so, why don't I do that? Oh, and the numbers are growing, which is great. Okay. Yeah, I mean, if at whatever, wherever you want.
If they're going to do the palette, maybe we should move it like to the other side,
yeah.
And they can line up. And okay. Does that make sense, Eric?
Yeah, and then so I've set my palette up already, right? And I'm thinking about four fundamental things. Warm and cool, and light and dark. And everything we look at in the world is built out of that construction. And it's all within degrees of warm and cool and light and dark. And just to keep things simple, the warm colors are over here, and the cool colors are over here. And yellows, orange, violet, blue, and so on. And so this building is so exciting because of this incredibly unique yellow, or I don't know what color you call it, or it probably has a name, Westover yellow.
Yeah, that's
but
whatever.
It's but looking at it and thinking about it is one thing. Going to Sherwin-Williams and having it mixed to patch the walls is another. But to actually look at it in the sunlight and mix it, and look at it in the shade, or to look at it in the shade or in a place where there's less light is a totally other thing, and that's the big task. And I was talking to Allie earlier, and I said, I think this yellow was designed to be seen against a blue sky, right? Like the two go hand in hand. Of course, it exists in all weathers, but look at the sky today, and look at how radiant, right up here it's almost orange, and over here the yellows become really pale. So the way things change, and the way the color migrates and changes as you go through is something. So I'm working with oil paint, but you'll work with acrylic. And one of the tough things about starting at a new site is you have to kind of work through the obvious things first. Like I'm going to like the most obvious sort of, as Maddie called it, like the iconic cupola there. It's, you know, I haven't been here long enough, and I haven't made 100 paintings to really start investigating the nuance of it. So you start with something really general and something bold, and then over time, you know, nuance appears. So you have to be patient. And that's the same and that goes the same for mixing the color too. Like, you know, that yellow, maybe it's in the right direction, but it's still pretty obvious, right? It's not particularly nuanced. But, you know, then maybe I add a little pink, I warm it up, and maybe a tiny bit of green to kind of bring it back to like an earthen quality. A little more pink, a little more yellow, a little more white, a little paler, you know. But then here, like, I'm not even looking at the building, right? I'm really just looking at my palette, and I'm remembering what I'm seeing. So it's funny how painting is both an action of looking and an action of remembering, right? Of course, all of this I'm talking about, but you just kind of know it when you're painting. And any of you who've painted have that experience already. You really do. And I might just be, I guess part of my job is to draw further attention to something that you've already experienced but might not have been able to name, you know. So, and I like brushes of all sizes, but this probably isn't the right tool for this job, but I brought it anyways just for laughs. And does everyone have a left hooking brush? Or a right hooking brush? This is an indispensable tool, which is like about 6 or 7 years old, you know, and they're just getting good, right? So this tool is probably better sized for, you know, this job. In fact, it's actually a little too flexible. So let's get a little closer here with things. I don't know. I'm just, like I said, I'm just going for the obvious. But what I'm really excited about is building up this little painting in shapes. I mean, the whole world is an arrangement of shapes. Shapes sort of held together by a few lines and compressed with wonderful color. I can see now that that's just so off the mark, right? But I won't really know until I see it against the blue of the sky, which is the next thing. I was talking about going from warm to cool, and
Eric, just a basic thing for those who haven't painted before, like you switched brushes just then, right?
Oh, I did, right.
So I'm wondering if there cleanup in between, you know, switching from one color to another with acrylic.
Good point. See, I'm thinking, I'm not even explaining everything that I'm doing. I'm going to ask everyone to use 4 brushes, right? A light warm and a dark warm, a light cool and a dark cool. That way, the blue of your sky, your brush, can stay really specific, and the yellow of your building can stay really specific, or the green of the grass can stay really specific. And then you can grab any other brush you like and kind of mix in between, right? So, you know, having specific tools for the specific task. So, thanks for pointing that out. So now, I'm also a little bit shady. So there. So now the blue of the sky is going to help me read. And I like to use a lot of paint because I think that the materiality of the paint, like the material itself, demonstrates a kind of richness of the, it relates to the richness of the physical world, right? Some people are inclined and learn to paint really thinly, and that's quite fine. There's so much room in painting that there's room for the way everyone paints, right? I like sort of a juicy, thick, drippy material paint. That feels like you're kind of almost feel like you're sculpting. You see right there a little of this yellow of the building kind of popped up into the sky, and that's going to be a further clue about how the sky changes. It's going to give me something to think about as I go on. And then the gray of this slate roof is pretty exciting too. The grays are kind of like mistakes that happen between colors, but they hold everything together. See how that violet went from with just a little orange to that strange lavender pink, and then a little bit of this green. We'll gray it down. Like that. It's hard to see, my glasses are fogging up. In this little sketch I made, I identified like 1, 2, 3, 4, like about 10 shapes, and they're really little shapes. This other vignette that I looked at down here, I was just thinking of like 4 or 5 bigger shapes. I started there, and then I just got more distracted by the presence of the cupola above. And the exciting part of it all is that, right now I'm just orienting myself, but color's an action, right? Color is like a verb. It's something that is activated by proximities, and as soon as things touch one another, like that yellow against, I'm gonna get this blue right, against that blue, is where color becomes like a verb, and it's like they have to touch. I think we've all been tentative about paintings at first, where we put one color down, then we leave a little halo around it, much like a child might make a field here, and then way up top they make the sky, but in between they don't connect them yet. But keep in mind that the sooner you connect the two, the more action, more activity, the more the painting is going to give back to you. And I also noticed that the sky is it's so differently rich over on this side than it is on the left side.
You mean in the painting or in your view?
In both in my view and in the painting. Well, as I'm painting, I'm responding to it here, and I'm thinking, well, why is that so much darker than that? It's because I can see that the form of that cupola affects the transition of the sky, right? It's like, like over there it's green, and over there, to my eye anyways, it's violet. And it's a big prism of light, so it's all kinds of cool things are happening. But none of it is, no one's going to hold you to it. You just take what you see and you kind of run with it. You might want to amplify it. Some people are super accurate, You know, it's like it's in their bones to be precise, but then others want to be very general about it. So you really sort of bring your own nature to what you're doing. I'm still just dancing around outside of all this. I'm gonna get those. Bring that gray down here. And then there's also another. Then there's the shadow in that yellow, which is something I hadn't really thought about. There's so much give and take to it. It's like mixing, applying, mixing, adjusting, and then slowly the painting kind of just emerges on its own. It takes on a life of its own.
For everybody.
Yep.
And you're talking about mixing grays, but you haven't used any black, right?
No black. So this is all the grays are called chromatic. Well, the darks I haven't made a dark yet, and I will to do the center. But what do you think a chromatic black is? Anybody? Take the word chroma. What does chroma mean? Color. Thanks. So it's a dark. It's a dark made by a variety of other. It's a black made by a variety of other colors. It might be a green and a violet and a crimson, or it could be an umber and a blue, depending on temperature, right? If you want something that's dark but warm or dark but cool, I'll get that going here in a second. And that requires yet another brush. So here's a violet. And that's a really cold green, as I see in that dark space, a kind of like green color up there. And I also have to get that. There is a little detail of that peak, right? And in this case, I'm not too concerned about the drawing that I made ahead of time. I'm just letting the edges of the paint do all the drawing. So that's about as dark as I possibly need, and there's no black in that as a color. See how pale kind of like, I don't know, it's the first stab at something that I've never done before. I mean, I've never looked at this building to paint it. So I'm like, I'm kind of getting into it. I could disappear for like 3 hours into this painting. But what I really want to do is see what you're up to, what you get up to. And I've been going on here for what, 15 minutes or so? Should I put this down and then get you all set up, and I can come around and talk to you individually as you're working, but why don't you find a spot that looks interesting to you? I mean, you can do the cupola if you like, but there are these dormers, there are views between, there the arcade, the trees, the grass. I mean, you choose. It's up to you.
So Eric, they should choose their spot, and then should they come and mix a palette?
Yeah, let's get a palette set up right now. Thanks for guiding me on that. Let's get a palette set up.